Morning, fourth graders. Welcome to day 2 of shared reading. This is going to be a 2-part lesson. So after you listen to this first one, then you're going to go ahead and answer the questions. Then you'll listen to another one. We just are breaking it up into 2 short lessons. So going ahead and jumping right on in, we always want to keep in mind our essential question for the entire unit, and how do Earth's natural processes impact our lives? We have to remember that word impact could mean change, it could mean effect. There are different synonyms for that word, so we understand that. But the natural process that we are talking about is the volcano. So we're in the middle of this text here. And as we read today, we are going to go ahead and determine the main idea by looking at our headings to find our what. And then we'll go ahead and determine our so what independently after this lesson. We are also going to be reading to summarize the text, and the strategy we're using to summarize is the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, why, and then of course our H, which is how. So we are going to go ahead and chunk the text, meaning breaking it apart into a few paragraphs at a time. We're going to stop and identify the key details and summarize. We're going to keep in mind that essential question that we just stated, our purpose for reading, and then we know that's to determine the main idea, explain the key details that support our main idea, and then we're keeping in mind those 5 W's and H as well. So let's go ahead and begin reading. Paragraph 12, famous eruptions. So I'm using this heading to determine my what. So I'm thinking that it's going to be famous eruptions, and our title is volcanoes. So it's going to be famous volcanic eruption. So let's keep that in mind as we go ahead and we do read paragraphs 12 through, give me just a second here, 12 through 14. The most famous volcanic eruption in history occurred at Mount Vesuvius in Italy in 79 CE. Pompeii and 2 neighboring towns were wiped out within just a few hours. As many as 16,000 people are believed to have died as their homes were buried under layers of rock and ash. The eruption sealed the region as if in a time capsule for more than 1,700 years. It wasn't until the 18th century that archaeologists uncovered the lost cities again. They found people and their pets preserved in white, ashy casts. Also preserved were the remains of homes, fountains, and a theater. Even the fresco paintings decorating some walls were preserved. We have learned much more about this ancient time from uncovering Pompeii than we have from other cities that aged normally. So here in paragraph 12, I'm going to stop to go ahead and find out the most important parts. And we do find a couple things. Number one, it's restated our where. So I'm going to get my highlighter out here. Not quite sure. Oh, I think I have to hide this here. So the text we're looking at is right over here. Thanks for being patient with me. Of course, only my second day. Excuse me. So we figure out that this famous eruption that they're talking about is where it's in Mount Vesuvius, when it's at 79 CE. So they're referring back to that introduction we read yesterday, and then we see that it is in Pompeii. So this is that famous volcanic eruption that they were referring to in the heading. Let's keep reading here. Everything else in this paragraph is just additional detail. Most rocks that erupt from Vesuvius are andesite, a type of volcanic rock that creates explosive eruptions. This makes Vesuvius an especially dangerous and unpredictable volcano. According to a geologist at the Field Museum in Chicago, when those kinds of volcanoes erupt, they tend to erupt explosively. The huge explosions create columns of gas, ash, and rock that can rise dozens of kilometers into the atmosphere. So in this paragraph here, they're really just telling us additional details about the famous eruption, about Pompeii. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the page to continue reading about this. Paragraph 14, our eyes are up here, following along with me as I read. The kind of eruption that occurred on Mount Vesuvius is described as Plinian, named for the Pliny of the Elder, a Roman nobleman who died as a result of the 79 CE volcano eruption. More recently, another Plinian eruption occurred in the Philippines. Mount Pinatubo had not had any major activity for 500 years, but in the spring of 1991, there were minor eruptions and earthquakes. Scientists took these as a sign that Mount Pinatubo might erupt, so the government ordered an evacuation of about 66,000 people. Then, on June 15th, 1991, Mount Pinatubo did erupt. More than 850 people died. The death toll would have been much higher without the evacuation plan. So I'm going to go ahead and stop right here because we were introduced into another famous volcano. And what was that? Well, it was Mount Pinatubo. So I'm going to go back to my highlighter and make my annotation that represents our what. So we have Mount Pinatubo. We do learn when it happens, and that's 1991. Where did it happen? It happened in the Philippines. And then who did it affect? This is our who is, well, 66,000 people had to evacuate, and unfortunately, 850 people did pass from that volcanic eruption. So we do have two volcanic eruptions, famous eruptions, if I go ahead and use my heading, that we were introduced to. So I'm going to go ahead and jot down my summary of this section in the margin. So I do have the summary, and I'm going to go ahead and only give that important information. I don't want to give too many details because those are considered key details. But we do realize that the Pompeii, which was a long time ago in the year 79, that there was an eruption. So in the distant and recent, 1991 is considered recent, past major volcanic eruptions have killed many people and wiped out whole towns. Once again, I'm taking what I learned and I did annotate within the text, and I made it just one sentence of a summary and put it into my own words. So, in the distant and recent past, major volcanic eruptions have killed many people and wiped out whole towns. You don't see any of those specific details in here because that would just be too much information to include in a summary. So, I put it in my own words. Alrighty. Of course, we don't want to move on without looking at our text feature. If we look down at the bottom, the Plinian eruptions, that's the one we just learned about that happened in 1991. A Plinian eruption takes its name from Pliny the Elder, a Roman nobleman and historian who died during the 79 CE eruption of Mount Vesuvius. His nephew, Pliny the Elder, or Pliny the Younger, wrote the only surviving description of the blast. From one of the mountaintops across the Baby, Pliny the Younger noticed a cloud of unusual size and appearance. He compared the cloud's shape to that of a pine tree, for it rose to a great height on a sort of a trunk that split into two branches. This cloud was actually a poisonous column of gas mixed with thousands of tons of rock and ash blasting out of the volcano's chamber. So, some interesting information that does connect with our text that we just read. Let's go ahead and continue to read paragraph 15 and 16, identifying the most important parts that connect to this heading, living in volcanic regions. So living in volcanic regions. Everything that we annotate, of course, has to be related to that. Let's go ahead and begin reading paragraph 15. When volcanoes do erupt, they can swiftly destroy habitats, towns, and their inhabitants. They can change the landscape, knocking down trees and moving land. They can create avalanches and mud flows, which can be devastating. Eruptions have turned daylight skies to night. Some effects of volcanoes can be far reaching. Volcanic ash clouds can affect global weather patterns. So, right here in paragraph 15, living in volcanic regions, well, what does that do? Well, we learned that it can definitely affect people, the landscape, and the weather. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I have all of those things annotated. Those are those things, and if you're living around a volcano or a region of a volcano, those are those things that we have to watch out for. So we can see here that it changes the landscape. And then it does affect our weather. And then we're going to just go ahead and infer that it affects the people because it does say that it can destroy habitats, which is where people live, the town. So we are going to go ahead and use that. That's our what and then our who that it affects. Paragraph 16. Scientists will continue to study volcanoes and their effects. In the meantime, cities near some volcanoes are improving their evacuation plans and teaching volcano safety. Some are banning new construction in hazardous areas. New satellite technology allows scientists to monitor and measure plate shifts and volcanic activity from outer space. This could allow scientists to better predict volcanic eruptions in the future. Alrighty, so here in this paragraph, we are introduced to a few important things, and that is that in this region that we're referring to our heading, we see that scientists are studying volcanoes. Oops, that was a bad highlight. Let me go ahead and retry that again. So they are studying volcanoes, and why are they doing that? Well, they're doing that to make better predictions. So they're doing that to make better predictions, hopefully to help the people in the future. And then what else happens to the people that live in volcanic regions? Well, they have to make sure that they are ready for volcanoes. So they are teaching evacuation plans and they're teaching volcano safety. They're banning construction zones. So we just wanted to make sure that we highlight, let's say, improving. Oh, I am not very good at highlighting today. Let's go back and try that again. I need to take my time. Improving evacuation plans. Okay, so that can go with teaching safety. Perfect. So I did finish reading this, and I'm going to take what I just read, and I want to make sure that I am summarizing the text using only the most important parts. So let me go ahead and summary. I see that living in volcanic regions, it affects people. And also scientists are studying it and they're making plans. So I want to make sure that I'm making this into a short summary that only includes the main ideas. And we'll go ahead and say new safety procedures. And we can even talk about I'll just say new safety procedures can help save lives during future volcanic eruptions. So don't include too much detail, only the main idea of this entire section here, living in volcanic eruptions. Alrighty. So today in the first lesson of shared reading, we did go ahead and we read the text and we used our title and our heading to determine the main idea. Well, really just our what, and your job is going to be to find the so what and form that main idea sentence. But we did we did summarize the text using those 5 W's in order to guide our annotations and to write a clear and concise summary that does not include too much detail or information at all. So take what we learned today and make sure you respond on that next slide. Try your best, and then don't forget to go on to the next lesson right after that.